Part 2. The danger of the past was that men became slaves. The danger of the future is that man may become robots. Henry David Thoreau. Chapter 8. By now, he had come to know Morton's voice. Despite its nervousness, the voice had a certain sense of authority to it, a definite sense of intelligence. There was something base about it as well, a lack of feeling. It was a totally objective conclusion he had come to by weighing inflection, rate of speech, and fluctuation in pitch, as well as breathing. Actually, it was no great insight on his part. It was part of his function, under the heading Voice Stress Analyzer. He also knew when he was being activated and when he was being shut down. He had come to expect the clicks on a fairly regular basis. The clicking sound signaled the moment his internal systems took charge of his form, or gave up control to the white-coated figures. When he was off duty, he was surrounded by blackness and the constant hum of his heart. He was activated now, standing outside two large golden doors. Dr. Roosevelt, a bland, one-dimensional man he had come to know from the lab, was standing next to him, whistling softly. He gazed down at Roosevelt. The man had a bald spot on the very top of his head, which he tried to cover by plastering his hair down and combing it in a swirl over the pink swathe of skin. Did this intelligent scientist actually believe that no one would notice that? He dismissed the thought. Such are the stuff that dreams are made of. Roosevelt smiled happily. Dreams, noun. A series of images or thoughts in the mind of a person asleep. An idle fancy. A vision, an aspiration. He considered this. He did not have dreams. He was not programmed for that. He tilted his head and concentrated, increasing the amp power of his audio system intake. He could hear Morton on the other side of the door. Morton's voice betrayed great pride. We get the best of both worlds. The fastest reflexes modern technology has to offer, on-board computer-assisted memory, and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming. Gentlemen, I would like to present Robocop. The doors opened. He stepped inside and scanned the room. Data printouts slid by his eyes, both above and below the main focus of his attention. The room was 20 by 40, the table in its center 15 feet by 5 feet. There were 20 men sitting around it, executives of Omni Consumer Corps. There were about 30 additional men seated along the wall. He took 4 steps onto the carpeting. The pile was 2.5 inches thick. Morton stood at the far end of the table next to a smiling, white-haired man and 2 army generals. Johnson, Morton's fellow worker, was staring beyond Robocop. Robocop turned and faced a scowling man positioned at the opposite end of the table. Richard Jones, Operations Manager of Security Concepts. Age 51. Robocop stood at attention before the assembled. One by one, the men in the room stood. They began to slap their hands together, great childlike grins across their faces. Slap, slap, slap. Applause. He knew they were honoring him. He had no idea why. Dr. Roosevelt nodded, and Robocop turned to leave the room. He passed by a full-length mirror on the way out and saw himself for the first time in his existence. He didn't break stride, but he memorized the vision, etching it into his memory. He was tall, padded, broad-shouldered. He was wearing a large segmented suit of armor, an exaggerated police uniform. His hands seemed titanic, almost too large to fit on the arms that held them. He rushed through his memory banks to try to find an analogy for the uniform. He managed to compare it to a hybrid of the suits worn by medieval knights and football players. He had a helmet on, stretching from his skull down to below his chin. His eyes peered out from a large slit in the upper part of the armored appliance. It was tinted light blue. There was an open section between the nose and the jawline where a stern mouth was revealed. A mouth, surrounded by pink. Cheekbones were exposed, high and regal. He considered this for a minute. Human flesh. Flesh, a heartbeat, blood coursing through veins. Did he remember that? No. It was probably just a piece of information he had gleaned from the biology tapes. He dismissed his findings as unimportant.